Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. After the latest round of China-U.S. trade talks, many wonder if or when President Xi and President Trump will meet again. But the two leaders' exchange last year in Argentina laid the foundation for current negotiations. In a sign of goodwill, President Xi Jinping from China received the U.S. delegation on Friday, mirroring President Trump's reception of the Chinese delegation in Washington last month. That goodwill was there 40 years ago, of course, between the two countries, when political leaders across the Pacific put aside their differences and opened diplomatic relations between China and the United States. Trade with the U.S. has swelled, along with China's reform and opening up. So did people-to-people exchanges as well in this relationship? So today, relations between China and the United States are seen as the most important one in the world. Will the world's two largest economies lift everyone up with them? Will they help bring global stability and peace? Can we see signs of it through this and the next rounds of trade negotiations? Still with us for this round of discussion, Xiaogeng once again, coming from Peking University HSBC Business School, and also Xu Sitao from Deloitte, China. In New York City, Robert Hormats, Vice Chairman of the Kissinger Associate. And last but not least, in Philadelphia, we are joined anew by Regina Ibrahimi, I hope I pronounced your family name right, Director of the Lauder Global Program and Senior Fellow in Management at Wharton School. Welcome to all of you. I want to invite our guest who is joining us anew. Professor, tell me about your thoughts. How much responsibilities China and the United States are shouldering right now, in fact, that they should reach a mutually beneficial and win-win agreement this time so that they will be working on their responsibilities for the rest of the world?
Well, there's no question that they need to be working on the agreement, and it does affect the rest of the world. I mean, a slowing down China obviously translates into less demand for goods from many other emerging markets, and likewise, a United States economy that is not well integrated with China means fundamentally having to reorder the structure of many supply chains, which likely will result in not just delays in production, but also potentially an increase in cost to consumers. The United States consumer has also benefited from a decades-long partnership with China, and if that trade relationship is not improved, it will for sure have important second-round effects. So it's not just about emerging markets and the developing world and the rest of the world needing these two huge economies to get along, but also so too do the Chinese and the American people.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Professor Xiao, also from the Chinese side, you know, it's been a while that for the business world to talk about geopolitics. But if you look at the discussion these days, economists like you are talking about, it's all about geopolitics rather than numbers.
Right.
So Professor Xiao, once again, how much responsibility the two countries and the negotiators have for the rest of the world?
Well, China is already a super, power in terms of the size, but with low productivity, still catching up in technology. So this is, but this shows the trend. The U.S. used to be so big, though all the other developing countries can be ignored. But now, no. So that's why I think for the global order, now is actually in transition. And the U.S. and China are representatives. One for advanced economy, one for emerging market economy. So how to deal with the future? This is a big question, and creates so much uncertainty, anxiety. Right. So that's why the negotiation is just a small part, but it reflects all the to be negotiated things in the future.
That's right. If geopolitics is so abstract for many people, the stock market is very concrete, I guess, when it comes to an issue. Mr. Xu, I know you're monitoring it every day as an economist. So what do you make of the U.S. stock market, the Chinese stock market, and the stock markets around the world in sentiment reacting to what's going on in the negotiations?
Well, sentiment is one thing, right? First of all, in the past few months, this is just a very crude estimate. The major development on U.S.-China trade talk could easily move both U.S. and China stock market by 2%
Right.
on daily basis, right? So that's so-called sentiment. But this is not just sentiment. If you look at the most recent decision taken by Federal Reserve on short-term interest rate, actually part of the decision was being made because Chinese economy. So a lot of China issues are increasingly global issues. That's not sentiment.
Right. Mr. Huang, I know you work on geopolitics a lot. Before I go to you for your comments about this area, let's listen in to my earlier discussion with American political scientist Graham Allison, who caught the world's attention for coining the term Suzisi's trap. It refers to the situation when a rising power causes fear in another established power, which could escalate toward war. But according to him, both sides should really avoid that vicious cycle. Let's listen in.
Few big words. One is called New Cold War. Another one is called decoupling. Another one is called isolating. So the thought is somehow you could isolate China from the global economy.
Can you?
I think you can say those words, but China is a backbone of the global economy. China is the major trading partner of every American ally and friend in Asia. So basically, Thucydides explained to us how first you have the reality, then you have the perception and misperception, then you have the emotions, fear, and then that's combustible ingredients.
Build up upon each other.
So we should be saying, let's be calm, let's be clear-eyed, let's be realistic. Let's it's not about blame, it's about resolving issues because we're either going to live together successfully or we could die together. So if those are the two choices, that's pretty easy.
That's, of course, Professor Graham Allison, and, of course, Mr. Huang, you know his theories very well. Your reaction to his thoughts, and particularly on the issue that how U.S. and China geopolitically, through this round of trading negotiations, should show to the rest of the world that what they can achieve together.
Well, I think that's very important, that there should not be a confrontation between these two countries. There's going to be friction because there are two different systems. China is advancing in the area of high technology, advanced 21st century technology. The U.S. has always seen itself as the leaders in those technologies. Now there's competition for markets in those areas. But it shouldn't be confrontational confrontation. It should be cooperation within an agreed framework that allows China to advance technologically in 21st century technologies and the U.S. to continue to do that. That has been done in the past. It can be done now. Mutual rise, and I would look at it this way. If the two sides can work together to create a better global economic order, as it's changing very rapidly now, we need to shape it in a way that deals with 21st century problems and deal with our issues. It's really mutually assured prosperity that is the end game if the two sides get it right and do the right things and work closely together. You won't achieve that through confrontation. You'll only achieve that through cooperation. And if you do, it's mutually assured prosperity for both sides because they'll trade more, they'll invest more, they'll interact more in research and development, and it'll benefit the global economy as well because, as Graham pointed out, you can't isolate China. That notion of containment is ridiculous. China is, first of all, it's politically bad. It's a bad idea, and certainly economically impossible because China, as Graham Allison points out, is the trading partner, the #1 trading partner with a great many countries, virtually every country in Asia, but also with many countries in Latin America and Africa. So you need to have this bilaterally constructive and multilaterally engaged.
Exactly. Professor Abrami, your thought about that, will the countries have the wisdom to be able to grow together and figure out a way together as a crucial juncture to avoid going in very divergent ways so that the rest of the world also have to choose where they want to stand, which is going to be devastating?
Yeah, I don't think that a trade war serves either side, but at the same time, I think that the ideal of mutually assured prosperity is contingent on a number of conditions being met. And the issue right now is not about necessarily just selling more goods to China. And I think in your earlier portion of the program, a number of your panelists made clear that there were structural issues in play here. So while it is true that American businesses have benefited from access to the China market, such to the point that many products, more of them are sold in China today than they are sold in the United States. But having said that, that doesn't necessarily belie some of the problems that remain. So for mutually assured prosperity to come into being, I do think that some of those structural issues would need to be addressed. And for those to be addressed, I think both sides would need to take into account that they both need to give something for that to happen. And I don't know that we're there yet, because we're at a political moment in both contexts where each side needs a win for domestic reasons. And what that win's going to look like may not necessarily be able to be at least presented as win-win, because both, to some extent, need, even if President Xi has said that mutual gain and win-win is the goal, neither side, I think, at this stage and in this particular moment in time can say that they gave up something.
Right. You see, everybody has a lot of views to share at this critical moment. That really shows the importance of talking about. Professor Xiao, your thought, how will the two sides be able to approach it? We are leading to the next week.
Well,
very briefly, you got 30 seconds only, sir.
Yeah, I think less emphasis on the, the national security, all those concerns, but put more emphasis on people's happiness, people's living standards, and also global order. That will help the two sides really to get something useful and acceptable.
Okay, Mr. Xu as well.
For the U.S. side, I think it's important to de-emphasize the difference in terms of growth model. Not only has to do with the political system and also culture. In fact, culture is being less understood. For China, accelerating economic reform is the best response.
That's well said.
Thank you.
For now, I have to wrap up this round of discussion. When the negotiators are going next week for further negotiations, I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have different rounds of discussions as well. We hope to be able to have the chance to cheer for them once they resolve the issues through mutually beneficial and win-win agreements. For now, thank you so much for joining us. Robert Hormats, Regina Abrami, and Xu Sitao, Xiao Geng. Really appreciate it. Have a great weekend, ladies and gentlemen. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight CGTN into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight stage. And thanks for watching, and tune in again next week for more insights across China and around the world. The weekend is up. Have a good one, everyone. Bye for now.